for those that are prescribed and those type of things. Okay. Yeah, that's what it is. That's
All right, are we all ready? Okay, cool. I will call to order the May 15th, 2025 meeting of the Salem Historic Landmarks Commission. Could I please have
Commissioner Kirkman.
Here.
Commissioner Raymond.
Here.
Commissioner Oldwin. Here. Commissioner Travis.
here?
Commissioner Strong.
Here.
Commissioner Weathers. Here. And Commissioner Kaiser and Commissioner Morris are both absent due to the forum.
Excellent, thank you. I will now take public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. I don't see anybody here for public comment. We'll move on. The next thing on the agenda is our consent calendar and the approval of minutes. I will do a motion for the minutes.
I motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Perfect. We've got a motion from Commissioner Kerdeman and a second from Commissioner Inman. Are there any corrections? Okay, perfect. Then we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes pass. We don't have any public hearings on the agenda tonight, so we'll move right on to special orders of business, which is our Historic Preservation Month awards. And Kimberly, you've got a PowerPoint for us? Okay, perfect.
Okay, Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. And I'm going to share with you some recommendations that are from Kara, who's not able to be here today. She was the previous one. And we met last Monday. And so these are just suggestions. I did speak with Kirsten about them as well. But you are free to pick whomever you want, or you can adopt the recommendations. So the first one, really, it isn't up to you. Sorry, I take it all back. It's the chair award. It's up to Kirsten. So you may recognize this lovely face. This is Andy Zimmerman. And as you know, he was a member of the Landmarks Commission, actually since 2018. He was vice chair in 2022 and then chair in 2023. All while he was fighting his own cancer battle. And he continued to post on our social media consistently, and he's continuing to do that even now that he's no longer commissioner. So, excellent choice.
Thank you, Andy, if you're watching, we appreciate it.
Yes, Andy, we appreciate it. Okay, so many of you went on the tour of the state capitol and got to see some of the amazing work that they've done with the CAMS project. And in particular, I think that there were some folks from Architectural Resources Group there, Maya Foti and her team, who I think have done a really good job in terms of sensitive treatment of character defining features. And I know even though there have been some adverse effects, they are working on a mitigation plan and getting that finalized. But in talking with Kara, given the huge scale of this effort, which has been going on, I think since 2016 or before, I feel like there was a CAMS 1 and a CAMS 2, like many different phases. Their work, I think, deserves to be acknowledged. So this is the recommendation for the Ben Maxwell Award for a public project. And then this is the recommendation for a residential project. So this is in the Gady Hill Bushes Pasture Park District. So I'm not sure how well you can see it. There's a little tiny picture there at the bottom. So in the 70s and 80s, this building was covered in vinyl. And the owner, John McCullough, he pulled all the vinyl windows out, he restored them to wood. And he's done, we think, a really nice job. He did come to Landmarks Commission last year. So this got reviewed last year, and it's now complete. This is our recommendation for the residential project. And then the Virginia Green Award. So I've got two different recommendations for this one. I wasn't quite sure where to put the Highlands neighborhood, but I'll talk about the Salem Public Works Department first. And it may be, I mean, they're very different. The reason that I'm recommending the Public Works project managers, you can see some of their lovely faces pictured here. They've just gone above and beyond in making sure to incorporate the protection of archaeological resources in the city's bond projects, which is no easy feat. And I just wanted to acknowledge their extra efforts, and some of these projects have been pretty complicated. And I think, anyway, I think they deserve to be acknowledged. And then the Highland neighborhood, I'm not sure where the booklet landed. Oh, it's with Connie. So this one is hot off the presses. We just got this today. Some of you may remember seeing Heather Ames here. She has, in the last year, she'd come regularly to Landmarks Commission. So they were one of our heritage neighborhoods in 2022. And since that time, Heather in particular and several other people in the neighborhood worked diligently on their own to create that book. So I mean, I thought they should be recognized for the above and beyond efforts. And there's a nice letter in there at the front. And then lastly, Cultural Landscape Award. So Jennifer Mongo, she's with Streetscape Environmental. She prepared a plan, the Minto Island Conservation Area plan, which the 10-year plan, and she and her team worked with the city, with parks folks, to develop a really important plan to restore Minto Island, which, if you know anything about Minto Island, it used to be the location for the dump. A lot of garbage there, and so they worked with the tribes and a lot of other local stakeholders, and they're working, part of this plan is to ensure that native plants are put back on the island, and it identifies not only what to do, but how to fund it. So this is the recommendation for the Cultural Landscape Award. I think they're already doing some wonderful work. And on Arbor Day this year, for example, they coordinated planting native trees out at Minto Island, and coordinated a bunch of volunteers. And last year in the summer, one of the first things they did was, I think this is what the picture is, they made sure they got some of the invasive species out of the waterways. So I don't know what's easiest. This is the last recommendation. If you want to go through them one by one and discuss, I can just.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Turn it over to you.
Great. Do we need to do a formal vote or just, okay, great. So we'll do some discussion on the Ben Maxwell Award. Are the commissioners supportive of awarding this one to the state public project?
Yes. It's just an amazing project. It's kind of awe-inspiring.
For this project, I don't know, can I recuse myself from that, but I'll also share conflicts with work, because I review this project.
You don't have to.
We're not making a formal decision.
Uh,
Yeah, Commissioner Hardiman.
I also want to point out that there have been archaeologists on Staff pretty much there all the time for a lot of the excavations and be more power to them. Monitoring construction is probably the most boring part of archaeology. So at least we hope it's the most boring part. So I've just been blown away with the amount of effort that the city and the state and archaeologists themselves have been putting into making sure that we don't run into anything that we don't want to run into.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this as well. I was really surprised and impressed on the tour how much detail had gone into the consideration of, you know, the like recessed panels on the ceiling and the different, you know, how to make this accessible doorknob that looks like the old doorknob. I thought those kinds of details are really impressive. As well as the like very complicated construction, architectural designs that went into like actually, you know, doing the stabilization of the building. That seemed very impressive and way over my head. So I'm supportive of this and I think it's a great idea. Okay, great. I think then we can go ahead and take a vote. Those in favor of giving the Ben Maxwell Award to the State Public Project, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. This is our vote with Commissioner Oldling excusing himself from that vote. All right, what kind of discussion do we have for the Ben Maxwell Award on this residential project?
Picture speaks for itself. It's just amazing, the transformation. And is it still for sale? Or
You can check Zillow, I don't know.
Yeah. It just looks incredible.
How long did you say that it took them? Like a decade's worth of work, like what? Window by window every year?
Oh, no, I think, Jake can jump in, but I think it took him to do all the work under the current permits. He did it all last year, yeah. But the bad one, sorry, the remodeling happened beginning in the 70s and 80s. So you know.
Yeah, it's always impressive to take vinyl windows out and replace them. It's a big project, but it really helps retain the historic integrity of the house or bring it back in this case. And it looks really beautiful, so supported this one. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor of giving the Ben Maxwell Award for residential project at 460 Bush Street, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Good job, Ben Maxwell Award. Okay, next up is the Virginia Green Award for the Salem Public Works Department. And it sounds like Kimberly, you might want us to also take a look at the grant neighborhood for this.
Or the Highland.
Or the Highland neighborhood.
Yeah, and you know, it's your guys' call. You've in the past given awards to multiple people. So, I mean, you could, if you choose, because one is clearly archaeological related and the other is neighborhood, I mean, yeah.
Any thoughts, Commissioner Inman?
Yeah, I would like to say something about the Public Works Department and their work on more than just archaeological things. They did a sidewalk project in the Port Chemeketa district, and they were very scrupulous about installing sidewalks that look just like the old sidewalks, and where the concrete stamps still existed for the original contractors who put in the original sidewalks. They actually took those pieces of concrete, cut a nice edge, and then set them in a little frame next to the sidewalk so that people could see, so that there was a remnant of the original sidewalk there. It was just, I mean, it was just such a thoughtful thing that didn't have to be done, but they did it anyway. So I just, the quality of work was just great. Just want to say that.
Any thoughts about giving out 2 awards?
I'm in favor of giving out both awards, the Salem Public Works Department, yeah, absolutely, if they would support archaeology and be advocates for it, we would be, as smooth sailing with archaeology and I think tribal relationships as well, so, they definitely deserve the recognition. And then the Highland neighborhood, I just glanced through it, and it's so cool, it's so amazing. This sort of thing doesn't really get put together these days. This was something, I feel like I see a lot of these from the sixties, like fifties and sixties, and usually it was like the nuns in the area would like put together a historic piece like that. And then now it's a historic piece in itself. And so something like this, especially in print copy, it's really, really, I like all the work that was put into it. So 50 years from now, it's gonna be its own historical document.
Yeah, I'm supportive of giving out 2 awards. I think it's nice to celebrate folks doing good work wherever we see it. So I think, is there anybody who doesn't want to give out 2 awards? Okay, great. Then I think maybe we're ready to vote. Yeah, okay, great. So all in favor of giving Virginia Green Award to both the Salem Public Works Department and the Highland neighborhood, please say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Congratulations to the 2 recipients. Okay, perfect. And then the Cultural Landscape Award, it looks like we've got the Minto Island Conservation Area Management Plan folks on board for this one. Is there any discussion here? Yeah, I feel like Minto Island is a cool historic piece of the city that we have, so it's really nice to see it kind of coming back to what it once was and honoring that historic piece of the city. So I'm in favor of giving out this award. Commissioner
I
Inman.
have a question. When this was a dump site, were all the indigenous sites just covered up?
Yes, so, well, and that was pretty common in this was actually one of those Superfund sites. And not only were the archaeological sites, a lot of them damaged, the actual waterways themselves were polluted, and the city and the state were finding the dump because of damage that was done to them.
It's not the
It's getting better.
Okay, great. All in favor of giving the Cultural Landscape Award to the Minto Island Conservation Area folks, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Congratulations. I think that is all of our awards, and just as a note for the chair award, I would be delighted to give that to Heidi. We've been really lucky to have him both on the commission and helping us with our social media stuff. It doesn't seem like any of the rest of us are really on board with that, so we feel they're very excited to have him, still part of our team in some way, so thank you, Andy. Okay, great. Is there anything else that any of you commissioners would like to bring up for the Historic Preservation Month Awards? Commissioner Merman?
I just wanted to say, is it Kara that picked them all out? Yeah, thank you. I know she's not here, but thank you, Kara, so much, because those were awesome picks and very relevant picks.
Okay, perfect. We'll go into our next item on the agenda, which is information reports. It looks like we've got a discussion item about the toolbox grant expansion.
So we, as I think you all know, currently offer a residential toolbox grant where we do 2 cycles a year and we match up to $1,000 for projects on residential homes that are visible. So we don't do any like interior work or things that people wouldn't be able to see. However, right now it is just only exception to that seismic. We do assist with seismic things, but We recently had a request from the Criterion Schoolhouse to see if they would be eligible, but since technically they're not a residential property, they are not currently eligible. And so we wanted to talk about the potential for expanding the program to include public projects as well. However, that would be with the caveat of we would preference for residential projects. If we have additional funding after we funded all the residential projects, we would then be open to funding public projects. This will come back to the commission as a formal action to take to change the rules of the program. If that's something that you would like, but we wanted to bring it up as a discussion first, just to see where we're at, if you want us to collect any additional information before we make those changes, and those three things, so.
Commissioner.
Yes, I think that if we expand it, which, I think would be, a valuable thing to do with the Criterion Schoolhouse, I think we should exclude city properties and, state properties.
Isn't this technically owned by the state though?
I'm not 100% sure if it's just the land is owned by the state or if the building itself is also owned by the state.
Well, then maybe just.
Sorry, yeah, I believe that it's owned by, I forget their name, the retired teachers of.
They're owned by them?
We can verify and
Yeah.
bring that
That
back.
would be something to be.
Yeah, I think our small grants going to the state of Oregon might be kind of silly, and we shouldn't be self-serving in terms of giving grants to the city, say but you know, nonprofits and private property owners or private commercial entities, in this case, you know, a fraternal group. I think that would be very much in there. It's not like a grant would go to the state fairgrounds, it would go into this, to directly serve the property and the building. Okay, anyway, that's my concern.
Go ahead, Connie.
I know that there are grants available on residential properties, so I think any decision should take into account what other options they might have. The one thing about the toolbox grant is that it's the only thing available for residential properties.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Commissioner Weathers.
Is this the first time someone has asked for something outside of the toolbox?
Not this type of request, yes, we've had other asks for just like people who wanted to do the interior changes or other things that just don't qualify within residential structures, but this is our first.
If we were to change the rules as it were, would we expect another property? Like, is there anyone that's kind of in the wings that sniffed around this sort of thing? And my point of asking is why not just make a one-time exception to this rather than change the rules and the floodgates for weirdness with other agencies and municipalities that doesn't really matter for this. Like you said, the intent residential. When I saw expansion, I was like, yeah, we should give more money because $1,000. It's one way.
Yeah.
I'd rather see it maybe increase the amount that you can get versus give it to a wider variety of.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, is maybe we could do like some sort of HLC approval of anything that's outside of the rules that comes in. I don't know how complicated that would be.
I don't think it's that complicated, the only thing will be timing in terms of when do we get that application, when is the next HLC meeting, can we make a decision in time for them to schedule the contractor, those sorts of things. But tonight's discussion is just to figure out if this is something the commission is interested in and how we might do that. Because we also want to protect the residential qualities, and that's why we were saying we wouldn't even award it to anyone who wasn't a residential until unless we had excess funds that we had already did all the residential ones. So, but
Commissioner Berman.
question about the excess funds. So if there's extra funds, does that follow into next year or the next seasons of grants? So, okay, so we don't lose that money.
Well, so far, uncertainty in the budget, we don't, but first so far.
Okay, that'd just be my concern is if we, you know, if we don't use it, we lose it. And I kind of like Commissioner Weather's idea on increasing the grant amount rather than spreading it out further. But, I just didn't know like logistics behind increasing money amounts might be a little more difficult.
I mean, you wrote expansion, so. Are there external students in your roles to the next year?
Yeah, we're looking. And I think, and Zach can speak more to this, like, so for sometimes certain grant cycles, like this spring is a good example, we didn't have, I don't think, maybe one applicant, two.
We had 2 applicants, but one of them was an eligible project.
Right, and so, and that kind of coincided with when the Criterion Schoolhouse folks were like, hey, we could use some help, and yes, even $1,000 would help us. And so I think, you know, I wanted to also clarify, I did find out that the state does own the schoolhouse, but the state does not allocate any funding for its maintenance. And so that's the issue, and it's all the responsibility for the retired teachers. So they're a nonprofit, but I mean, if what I'm hearing, and you tell me, Zach, about, we were considering like that this would fall in line with the next grant cycle, and that applications would open July 1. Right, and then at your direction, I mean, we can see how many people apply, and then we can come back to you with at that time after, or well, you're making it.
The only reason I'm making a fist because I will not be here in July.
Oh, that's right.
Certainly could come back
In August.
in June with suggested revisions, whether potentially if we wanted to do a like, we can distribute up to the full amount for the year, which is $10,000 for the year. Within the year, so someone, if we only get one applicant, they could get $10,000, I don't know, I have to double check the finance rules, but that could be a change to the program, because then we would be using the funds that we have to greater fund people who request it. We could do some sort of rubric where like we score them differently based on what type of project or development is, or in terms of like state versus individual on there, so that residential projects would automatically pass any sort of score for non-residential projects, and I can do a lot of math. Any math you want me to do?
So maybe, I guess the direction we would need from you guys is I mean, option A is that you could keep it on the staff review only track, right? Where we would just be looking right now at the spring applications, which we only have one, so we have an extra 4,000, and that at your direction, we could bring back qualifications just for this particular case for the Criterion Schoolhouse, and you guys could review that, or we can put a pin in it all, and I'm thinking August, right? Because the application will open on July 1. We can bring everything back to you guys at the August meeting. We'll see what we get and have a larger discussion. So I feel like there's two choices here. And it's up to you.
It's a bummer, I didn't realize the numbers, that's a lot of talk for,
A small one.
yeah. My own crazy math idea is that I guess we call it like an inverse slush fund, is it maybe? If the application period is whatever, 6 months, at the end of it, if there was one applicant, they got their 1,000 whenever they applied, but no one else did, so they get the other 4 just because they showed up to the table. Obviously, if their project was large enough to warrant that. That's, you know, doesn't preclude anybody else from getting their 1,000 just the same, and if you have the 5 that you would like each time, then it's that, but also spread it out for the few that do take the time and the effort to do this work.
Are these matched funds though? So like if they get 5,000, they have to match that 5,000?
Right, yeah, the project would have to be large enough.
Oftentimes.
I would say just that estimate is that most of the projects we get are between $5,000 and $10,000 is what the person is spending. I've seen some up to 32,000 and we've had some that were like $2,005, so that's just barely qualified.
And I wonder if with prices rising on this kind of thing, it would be worth it for us to think about raising the max on how much money people can get. Like if we're only getting 1 applicant and we could maybe do a little bit more with that money, then maybe it would be worth it. I think generally on this sort of like one-off thing, I'm supportive of the HLC sort of selecting extra projects when the request comes in. I think that's kind of the method I want to take. I don't know how other people feel.
Yes, discretion.
Yeah. Commissioner Scott?
I'm more in favor of doing one-time exception in a situation that we are all, you know, staff is very familiar with, like the Criterion Schoolhouse, which people in the area, you know, people in town use that, like it's a wedding venue or, you know, whatever. So it feels more like it's not so much a state property as sort of, it is a local resource. So I do like that idea. And I think that, you know, if we're going to do anything with the toolbox grant, it would be great to have reminders for those of us who can't keep track of dates and don't remember that it's time to apply for toolbox grants. I bet there would have been a lot more applicants if there was maybe just, I don't know, way to kind of let people know. I think a lot of people would take advantage of it. I think a lot of people would take advantage of it.
And I think that's a really good point. And so I know like you guys, Fortunate that has a list or do you have your own neighborhood?
We have a partial email list, yeah, an internal email list.
Well, we have the Northeast Neighbors and then we have the Inner Circle. But I mean, those kind of neighborhood lists, those are good neighborhood lists.
Do we include a note about the grants in our like mail out newsletter that we do every year?
Not every year, we definitely included it, in some years, and then every year we do post, a news story online, but that's just on the city website, so who sees that, it's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes, our social media team will publicize it on socials, I know that they did for this year, but it wasn't. Yeah.
Could we just put put something on our webpage for this city of Salem that gives the deadline? You know, just like say toolbox grant application deadline, you know, May 1st or whatever the date is, and just to remind.
Yeah.
Which could be static.
We do have a static page, and then every year I just update it with the new deadline and information, which is always it's always the same-ish. We opened it on the 1st of February and the 1st of June, and then or July, sorry, and then I leave it open until usually the Friday of the first month after. So it'll be the first Friday in March and the first Friday in August, just when we close them, generally.
I think if I remember correctly, if it doesn't get dispersed, then it rolls to the next. Is there a current balance in the fund? That is it? Just curious. Or?
I do not remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's either 11,000 or 14,000.
I guess my point is, sometimes you
Which
see
for us,
like,
we
we-
don't laugh at.
no, but sometimes you see like, oh, we bought too much and now we have to sell it at a decent or at a cheaper price, and so like, hey, we have an excess, I know it's not the words we want to say, we have an excess of money, but
Yeah, right now.
now, special sale this year is
Special sale.
2,000 because we gotta get it out the door before the next year's model's coming, whatever, something like that to spur on the folks that maybe aren't paying attention or forgot, or would prefer 2,000 over 1,000. something
Yeah.
like that. But I don't wanna deplete the fund all the way, but it was, anyway, I don't know, pennies.
And I think, the idea of getting the word out, I think that's where we probably need the most help.
I'm not in favor of the exception. I sympathize with the money issue, but like Connie mentioned, for residential property, there's really not much incentive, and so I really would like to keep it that way, but I would be open to a larger discussion, like having here August one, I think that's what I'm in favor of rethinking kind of how this is set up. Looking to expand the money or who gets it, that's.
Any other thoughts? You don't have to make a decision tonight, so. just Any other things we'd like, do you think you could maybe bring a little bit of data about how many people have applied in the last like 2 or 3 years, just at each cycle? I think that might be helpful to make the decision.
Are there any other pieces of information that you'd like staff to have so that you have a discussion?
Well, I'm just, new to the team, but how, I love like the backstory, whenever that happens, how long it's been, and what's the impact been or anything like that, to know if there needs to be anything.
We can do
needs
a
to be-
whole presentation.
Yeah, I want a whole presentation, I'm gonna point out a photo of every single problem.
I would like
Oh,
to
my
just
goodness,
show that
Marcel.
abandoned volunteer.
It's pretty unique to Salem, right, to have a toolbox apparently, but we're very lucky to have access to it, so.
How much do we get every year for the toolbox grant?
In the past, it's been $10,000, 5,000 comes from, or has come from a private donor. With a recent enhance, and then 5,000 comes from the city council.
Is there any way that, cause like Highland, the Heritage.
Yeah.
Do they, are you allowed, because you're in a heritage neighborhood, do you qualify, or do you have to have a local designation?
The way the criteria are set now, you have to have a local or national.
So could we, is that an option to consider, that we could say, hey, you're part of a heritage, because that would at least increase.
Yeah, I mean, it's your guys'
Just
program.
a thought,
Yes, you can absolutely
They would
make
still
whatever
limit, like,
criteria, yeah. But
preservation works.
it would be helpful to us to have some criteria, right, because like part of all of our heritage neighborhoods, we've done an evaluation, which these guys are gonna talk about. So for us, it would be helpful to clarify, like, it's eligible contributing, I mean, it gets dicier if it's not.
Yeah,
You know what I
I feel
mean?
a little bit nervous about that because at least with the local designation, there's some protection for that resource. Whereas if it was just a heritage neighborhood, they could tear it down after the city spent, money helping them fix it up if they really wanted to, so.
And a little bit of data, we have had a handful of folks actually designate their properties so they could get that $1,000.
There's no limit on how many times you can apply for that, right? You can apply every cycle.
Yeah, we currently don't have a limit. We have had a homeowner who literally came to us every cycle to do one thing.
Yeah, yeah, over many years.
Yeah.
That was my plan, but I would forget
July.
Okay, great. Well, it sounds like maybe we'd like a little bit more data on like how many applicants we're getting, maybe some like data on how we're putting the word out. Cause I wonder if maybe the problem is just that we need to talk about it more. And then none of this would be an issue. I don't know, I feel a little conflicted about the Criterion Schoolhouse because it is kind of a really weird, unique situation, like it's like owned by the state, but like they don't give any money, and it's like managed by some passionate volunteers, so I feel I would like to give them some money if we can, but I understand the reservation on, keeping that limited to private homeowners, so. I don't know, maybe just something to think about, and then we can discuss it further next time, but. Any other comments? Any other requests for staff to bring in more information next time?
Maybe with the PowerPoint slide, maybe for visual folks like me, including like what the different options are that we've talked about written out. I feel like we've talked a lot about different options, and so now my brain is confused, it's getting confused. It's what time at night?
Happy to do.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And anything else on the box? Great. Then we'll go ahead and go to work plan assignments. I think we've got some updates. I know Juliana did some work on the local designation, for the Englewood Park, which I need to put more work on. So, good job, Juliana, if you want to give an update.
Yeah, we had a good meeting, on the 9th of this month, and, a lot of research has already been done, for, designating Englewood Park, and, so we've, got our little assignments on work to do, and our timeline is, tentatively, set to bring something back to the commission in September meeting, so that it could, if approved, move on to city council before the end of the year, and, the Englewood, Park celebration of their 100th birthday is, March of 2026. So this is all in, trying to prepare for celebration. So that's the short version.
Okay, just a good reminder on that side. Thank you. Is there anything from, I think we have one other local resource maybe on the. Frank House. What? Okay, good. Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. Well, I will get at least a small update. I think maybe Jacob and Marcel are gonna talk more about our efforts on the Cessna scan. I was like, that's not right. I said it. Scan neighborhood survey, which we were out there last weekend doing some surveys. That was pretty nice. We got like a nice big block done, so that was pretty productive. Is there any other work plan assignments that people would like to talk about?
Yes, for the photo contest, I cried myself to sleep
Oh,
because no one has applied.
that's
I gave it to the newspapers, I gave it to all these real estate people, I said, hey, go tell your friends, because this is huge, I mean, there's some land, but mostly it's real estate related, you'll engage with your clients and property owners. Put it on the, what's happening, the Salem County thing, and all of the, and blah. Yeah, as I'm told, still blah, right?
I think we have 4 now.
Okay. That's really late, and therefore disqualified. I know you don't understand it, but my heart hurts, I mean, the family of my friend would do it, and that's cheating, so. Yes.
Well, we do have, I'm trying my mouth, so we did this just this week, so the president of the board of the Willamette Heritage Center called me and asked if they could help get the word out about our photo contest. And they also offered us a space at the Willamette Heritage Center in where the Pendleton store used to be to exhibit the winners. So they're being optimistic. We'll get some. And then we also got a call, and Zach, you talked to her from a reporter, but I didn't catch which.
I want to say it's Salem Reporter, but I'm not sure.
They're gonna run an article about it, and and they wanted more information.
Well, they're just.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well.
Told all this a long time ago.
What's it?
Cassie.
Rachel.
What's the deadline?
June 7th.
Okay, so we got like another few weeks, maybe that's enough time.
Oh, June 9th. We presented it as we pivoted and we're presenting it as an activity to do during Historic Preservation Month.
Yeah,
So go take your photos now. And then we will evaluate them afterwards. We did do a news article on the website that then I asked city staff to please publish and share, and they did, and included a highlight for the photo contest, so hopefully that helps as well.
Let's advertise the photo contest and talk about the toolbox at the same time. To confuse people, everything is $1,000 for the picture.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be.
I mean, I have to designate my house for it? Okay.
That's right.
I think it's good to pivot if something's not working out, so that sounds great. Perfect. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I have one more thing, and I'm channeling Andy a little bit. So in the spirit of education and outreach, so I have a podcast now, if you didn't know this. So it's called, you can find it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, called Salem History Moment. And it's been airing on KMUZ for many years, but now it's a podcast, so you can search Salem History Moment, and they're like 10 minutes long. They're all interesting bits about Salem's history. And Andy is sharing them on.
Oh, there you go.
Can you find it? Yeah. Yeah.
What are your sponsors for this episode?
I have no sponsors. It's all free.
It currently has 5-star review. One review, but it's 5 stars.
From my dad. That's cute.
Okay, cool. Any other work plan assignment updates that folks would like to talk about? Oh, yeah, go just one.
Isn't archaeology stuff starting soon?
Oh, yes, yes.
The field school should be starting up.
The
Next
27th.
27th, so just after. Building, is that?
Yes, yes, the 27th. So we should talk about it.
Yeah.
If you have time. I mean, please. I will bring snacks.
Okay, cool. So I think we'll move ahead to the newsletter.
Nothing, we are at the plan, I don't know why I put it on the agenda because we already have a topic and theoretically we would have signed articles tonight, but the topic is the photo contest subject, so we'll assign them next week, and by next week, maybe next one.
Okay, cool. We should include our award winners too. That'll be nice.
Okay. If anyone wants to write an article about one of the award winners, we can do that.
I'll write an article about Andy.
Okay. But while I'm up here, I guess, I'll wait. Staff.
You want to do that now? Do you want to do that during?
Do that.
Do you guys want to talk about?
Yes.
Kim says you have something to talk about.
Yes, I do. Please talk.
Oh, do none of those work? Well, there then.
Jacob Morris, City of Salem's historic preservation planner. And We just wanted to give a little bit of an update today on one of our ongoing projects that Kirsten touched on. The Scan Heritage neighborhood, you know, is kind of their kickoff project is their historic resources survey, architectural survey. It's a reconnaissance level, or what they call windshield level survey. And so one thing we've been doing is working with people in the neighborhood that they're helping with that. It's volunteer driven. And also we've been very fortunate in that Marcel here is an intern that's been with us this spring. And he's been working on kind of two tracks. The first track he's been working on, all the data, because there's a lot of data. Each one's either a physical or virtual sheet of each property. And then also, there's always a name that turns into a report, something that summarizes all that data. It's useful. And so we thought it would be nice for him to share kind of where we are with that and kind of what he's looking at and maybe some of the trends that he's been seeing in, as he gets more familiar with each of these resources and how they're congregated and where they live next to each other, that sort of thing. And so, take away.
All right, thanks, Jake. Hey, everyone. Hello, David TV Land. I'm Marcel Rousseau, Historic Preservation intern for the city. So Jake mentioned that we're making some progress on this report. One of the things we did last Saturday was we had some volunteers help us photograph around Scan. In some ways, the biggest part of our project is the photograph. Kirsten was there. I also want to acknowledge Christine, who I think is our most epic photographer right now. Jake and I also walked around, photographed a bunch of structures and buildings for about 3 hours all told. To put that on a historical map, so I should say that in terms of our photographic archive, so far pretty much all of the Fairmount neighborhood photographed. I think Christine is really the hero there, doing a lot of that work. In terms of just thinking in terms of historic neighborhoods and additions, most of the photography is around the northern parts of Scan right now. So much of the areas north and east of Fairmount, that is to say, former Owens Addition, the Southwest Addition, and Jones Addition. We photographed most of those areas. This is for the history geeks. Some of the Pleasant Home Addition, south of Bush Park, we photographed much of that. Some of the Knob Hill Addition. And the big task is photographing southwest Scan. So we really have a lot of work to do there. The photography is important because it allows us to classify the buildings in Scan by entering style, structural data to the map application that we're using. We're using the field map application by Esri. And it's a really useful tool. It allows for volunteers to sort of go out in the field and make this their own project. At the same time, it allows us at the other end to enter data into the map and to keep a sort of live map going. So we can use the photos to sort of classify the houses and the buildings and the churches and everything we see in terms of style. We can also classify the materials, and we can sort of ascertain integrity of structures, and also sort of make judgment calls about eligibility. So we can sort of build this database, and it's a geographic database at the same time that it's sort of informatic database. And I noticed that you were actually putting style data right in the field because Jake's just that good to see something. So, that's definitely a farmhouse style done. While we're entering this data in the map, I'm also writing up an RLS report, and in this case, guided by SHPO structure. So, it states a background of the effort, states our objectives, describes the survey boundaries, which are quite interesting. We determined that the survey boundaries came about in 1973 because of 3 overlapping school districts. So it's interesting my neighborhood was formed like that. Also the report depicts the setting, provides a historical overview, states our methodology, and ultimately it will state results analysis and recommendations. We are not at the recommendations point yet, but we're getting there. And the report should really, I think the point of it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it really facilitates the next possible stages of our work. So this should lay the ground for intensive surveys coming up, for other sort of commemorative output, like perhaps something like that booklet right there. I should note that what's fascinated me as I sort of work through all of this is not just the multiple style classifications, but the development patterns that I've noticed throughout SCAN. So just noting that SCAN sort of developed north to south and west to east, and that these development patterns have a lot of historical meaning for the neighborhood. At the same time, it's a reconnaissance level survey, but it's been hard to sort of ignore the archaeological history. There's a lot of Calapooya presence in SCAN. It's well documented that Calapooya architecture is extended up from what's now downtown to the side of South Salem High School and south of South Salem High School. And so finding a place for that in sort of a broad overview survey is an interesting problem, but a useful one. That said, there's multiple diverse narratives that I'm noting, and I'm sort of very anxious about period of significance, because we're really, in terms of the current built environment, we're looking at, essentially a century of significance from about the 1860s to the 1960s, as far as I can tell. And in that sense, I want to sort of keep that open for now, but at least going up to the middle of the 20th century allows us to account for the emergence of sort of middle-income multi-unit apartment buildings, which I think is a really important part of the SCAN story. It's not just about sort of bungalows of the 20s. It's not just about sort of the pastoral SCAN of the 1870s and 80s. There's also sort of these other stories that I think are important. And a lot of this has to do with sort of transportation infrastructure. So the streetcar, of course, was done commercial, starting in the 1890s, the 1880s. But by the late 1920s, the streetcar no longer had sort of, it had been supplanted by the automobile. And of course, that's when SCAN started to develop sort of south and west. So these stories are really sort of part of the broader picture. And our survey will touch on all of that, but it'll leave room for more intensive efforts in all of those directions. So yeah, I mean, the main narrative I'm looking at right now is just the diversity of architectures. We have 3,500 structures essentially in SCAN, give or take, outbuildings and whatnot. And in some ways, I'm looking back to the 1984 publication, Historic Salem, which was put together by this commission, by the city. And in that case, they document and SCAN houses up to 1939. And it's really houses, churches, Bush Pasture Park, and the Pioneer Cemetery document. And so I think we're at a point now where we can actually sort of diversify what SCAN sort of means in terms of the built environment. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to contribute here, is sort of how much more diverse this neighborhood has become in the last even 40 years since that last report. One of the pleasures of this these past few months has been sort of researching and learning about the work of David Dunaway. And so I want to sort of quote him, because this is a community effort. It's something where we really do value the volunteers and the work they do. And one of the nice things about what David Dunaway always does is, as he writes, he always says, this is a history, but it's always subjunctive. He's always like, this history could be different if other people's voices come into it. So, to quote David Dunaway, this survey suggests a possible history of SCAN, as he says, only with your help and the help of your friends and neighbors, and the story will be further documented by pictures and enriched by more meaningful commentary. So we really do value as many people want to get involved in this as can, because it's a neighborhood-wide project. So that's where we are now, documenting, writing it up, trying to sort of account for all of these narratives.
Very cool. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the survey?
Send them another. Scan. Meaning in the field.
Yeah.
I kind of think we should, we could do that.
I'd like another opportunity to try.
Sure, yeah, we'll get one in the works.
Thank you guys. I had a lot of fun out there. It's nice to see that neighborhood. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you send a reminder to the commissioners? Because I think
Yeah, it was fun, and it was fun to walk around with Christine. We talked about style a lot, so I think she's an expert now, so I definitely rely on what she said. She did a great job. Okay, great. Is there anything else for our discussion items? We'll move on to public comment for any items that aren't on the agenda. There is nobody in the room, so we'll go ahead and move on to the historic preservation officer report.
So I have one item, and I'm not quite sure, given our last discussion about the toolbox grants, but I'm gonna share with you the issue, and then I'd love some feedback about what you think we should do. So we've had one, well, two issues. One is a marker that was taken, I'm looking at Zach. It was from we had a grant quite a while back. It was these nice bronze markers that are all in our downtown on our commercial buildings. Pretty heavy duty marker, and we were asked by the property owner to replace it. And so I was able to track down the vendor that we got it from originally. It was actually before I started working here. And the cost to replace it is about $650. And so so there's that, and we don't really, I mean, the money was initially a grant, was the Save America's Treasures grant, which they don't even have that anymore, right? And I don't think CLG grant, they probably doesn't cover markers. So there's that, and then we had one of your beautiful wraps, utility box wraps was tagged again. And so we need to fix that. So again, these are things that are kind of coming up all at once, and we're just not entirely sure. Again, these are things that we want to fix, and given the current budget issues, I'm just sharing it as an issue. I don't have a solution.
I've seen this happen in other towns and everything, and a lot of times it'll get replaced and then stolen again. So, in-kind replacement sounds great, but I feel like we might wanna look into what other towns have done and to like make it so it's a little more difficult to like take a crowbar and pop it off, or to tag something, or at least if it's tagged, it's easier to clean up. Just because of that, that's gonna be more money, I know, but if we just keep replacing stuff, it's just gonna be a leaky budget.
So, but I mean, I think, I just wanna share that this is a newer challenge for us, and so. And I think the biggest challenge, well, moving forward too, it's a bit of an unknown about the CLG grants. I know Robert lives this, right? So just figuring out where to find funding sources, like everyone else I'm sure is doing for these kinds of things.
You talking about the utility box wrap?
Yes.
I mean, Dab just did a bunch of public art ones of the utility boxes, so I don't know if they had any more in the queue, but perhaps you asked one of those to be replaced with something that's already there.
You guys.
Well, they just did a bunch. I don't know if.
I'm writing that down.
There was like a schedule.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I gave them the name of the vendor, like, it's like we share that resource, it's just that the pots of money that I cannot.
And I know the tagging success story, I don't know that it necessarily works for vinyl so much. In fact, I hope vinyl's not terribly hard to clean, but I don't know
Yeah,
if chemicals work.
They're supposed to be graffiti resistant. So.
Yeah, so I have this sacrificial layer or something on the brick on the alley of Whitbox, my side, and it got tagged on Monday. And we were able to wash it off that afternoon, very simply, because it had that coating on there.
That's great.
And then 440 got tagged today. So it's an epidemic,
Oh
but that's already
my
painted brick, so it's easy to just paint it again, it's easy, don't do it.
There's a connection where we need a wall where people can tag.
Oh, well,
I don't know.
I'm in favor of that, but, yeah, so that sacrificial layer, it's just people like on there, and it's not terrible, but again, I don't know if that works with vinyl, with brick anyway, I'd love to see. I'd love to see other property owners get that, so that it doesn't just sit there or be covered up by compliance with or abatement, whatever, it's just that great paint. And the downtown riverfront, whatever, that toolbox, right, would pay for that as well. So just if you happen to know anybody, they can ask for development.
Would they be able to pay for a plaque?
No, no, it's the strategic projects, it's to reduce crime or deteriorate and graffiti is related to gangs and crime. So unless it's a plaque about it, no, anti-gang, something about it.
No.
Don't believe it.
Which, do you know which one it was?
I'm looking at it.
So the plaque is the right here.
Which vinyl wrap is it?
With the vinyl wrap,
Isn't the one like
The Cessna one about industrious Salemites?
maybe?
I saw that it was gone. So I guess it's probably that one.
the Rocket Park.
Oh, and the Rocket Park one is also gone then.
It has a tear, sorry. Graffiti and a tear.
Is it like, oh, the tear, that would be replacement for me. That is understandable. Well, I don't know, I feel like on the vinyl wraps, they're kind of supposed to be a little ephemeral, because it's kind of like a thing, so if it's, you know, an evolving kind of place to put new information, I think that makes sense.
And maybe, I mean, those wraps were initially a heritage grant, so maybe it's just we put money in the budget for.
See what the neighborhood wants to do.
Okay, and then a few other updates, good stories, so I may have shared about this before, but I can't recall, so, disaster resiliency kits, so we did get a grant, it's through our Heritage All-Star program to put together, so we, if you recall, there was a gal, Melissa, who came from UFO to come talk about the disaster resiliency plan for cultural heritage organizations in Salem. And to build upon that, we got a grant to put together actual kits for 15 to 20 nonprofits. So we've been working with Ross Sutherland, and he's been helping us going way above and beyond, developing a survey to go out and do essentially a needs assessment for these cultural organizations to figure out where they're at in terms of record storage and what they need, what they're most worried about. And as it turns out, most people are worried about water damage, flooding here in Salem. And so a lot of them have records that have never been scanned or are sitting in terrible boxes on the floor, in their garage, or all sorts of different various vehicles. So we have now a good sense of what people need, and we're putting together kits to help them. And even more exciting, Ross has a lead on a space at a church downtown who's willing to donate that space to set up a scanning center. And I think for Robert, we can borrow a scanner and some stuff and things from Heritage, and so we can set up like a scanning center there. So I'm pretty excited about things that we're doing, very tangible things to help these organizations. And then the other exciting project that we're working on, which I think I may have shared a little bit about, but we're zooming right through, and we're going to be wrapping up next month, and I'll be able to share a copy of this document with you. It's a equity historic context statement, and thank a special shout out to Marcel for tracking down this document from 1964, a race study that we've been looking at, which was the basis for establishing our Human Rights Commission in Salem. We couldn't find it here, and so Marcel. So thank you. But so more to it. Yeah. So, it's good. So the equity historic context is basically, we're working with the Equity Roundtable and also with, input from the Human Rights Commission. And developing essentially an overview of the city of Salem's policies since it was created in the 1850s towards marginalized communities. And the goal of this document is that it will be used by our long range planners and transportation planners in developing a more equitable approach to housing and transportation and that sort of thing. So we're very excited. So you guys will get a chance to.
Have you looked into like the urban renewal
Yep.
efforts a lot? That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
Yes, we'll have a whole section on urban renewal, and it's interesting that Salem was not one of the communities that was formerly redlined, but one of the things that we have uncovered are those early plat maps, early subdivisions where they literally put in there as a CCNR a condition that only wait. So it's easy to do that here.
Any like deed restrictions or just on the survey?
No, that it's on deed restrictions. So anyway, so you'll get to see that. And then as Jessica mentioned, we are starting our archaeological project. You're all more than welcome to come. May 27th through June 27th at Willamette University near Smolin Hall. We're going to be having a public archaeology open house on Friday the 13th. I'm choosing to think of that as lucky. And this time we're having a special listening session for tribal members and folks from Willamette leadership are going to be there to listen. In particular, the site that we're exploring is the Indian Manual Labor Training School. So it's a big first step to be doing that and have the leadership participate. So we're very appreciative.
More things. This is about future meetings. So this is our final meeting in council chambers until renovations of the city center are done. We anticipate that we will be at the community room of the police department. Starting in June. However, we were also invited to come to Warden Schreiber Conservancy we will not be hosting our public meeting there, but we were talking about potentially doing a little awards gathering where we would invite all the winners of the Sort of Innovation Month Award and meet there. It would be outside of regular meeting time. So we'd have to find a date that works. Or we could just go there just to get a little tour because they specifically invited us. So that's kind of something that the commission will need to decide. I can't remember, Kim might know if they only have opportunity for us to come in June or if it's all summer or what, but.
No, Yvonne said we could pick what worked. She suggested June, but that doesn't work. I want you to be there, so not July.
I will be here in June, but I will be gone today.
I like the idea of doing an award gathering for folks. It's kind of a nice chance to celebrate people, but it is like an extra demand on calendar, so I don't know how to feel that. Really excited.
Typically, if we do it in daylight hours, we very brief awards. 10 minutes of awards in the middle of tour of the garden.
Yeah.
Our meeting, not
You're thinking we would have the award ceremony before like the HLC meeting?
Well, if this is separate from an agency. So because if we have a regular agenda, then we comment and all that stuff, so it would just be. the awards and tour of the Road Schreiber, garden there. I'm not sure all the commissioners been
Commission.
there. It's worth looking at just to see the way that they designed outdoor rooms for that space. It's an acknowledged cultural landscape or garden. It's a design space, and it kind of exemplifies some of their design elements. So and June's probably a good time to go. Long day, and start too soon.
What if folks, feel about like, remind me when you met for the capital? Was it like at 4:00?
4:30, I think.
Is that a terrible time to? Great. It's earlier than your normal meeting time, so that's why I'm asking.
And I feel like it's always hard to like catch people, because if we're gonna get the award winners too late, I guess I'm imagining maybe like a.
Is there any, is the second week in June? Or
Maybe June 12th. Say.
You've got your archaeology day on the 13th. Right?
Yeah, but that's fine. Just don't put it on the 13th.
We can also do like a Wednesday, yes, like maybe the 18th.
That's actually our next commission meeting, because the 19th is a holiday and we will not be.
Well, then we could do it during our regular HLC meeting. Oh, no, we can't, because it's a holiday, just kidding, that's what you said. Would people be available on June 12th? For our award ceremony and a tour?
What time?
Probably after work, maybe 5 to 5:30.
Yes.
Let's do it.
There's a lot of traffic on Mission Street at 5 o'clock. It's
That's
very,
true.
very-
Do you want to do a little?
Well,
Or is that too
5:30
hard?
might be fine.
5:30,
Yeah. 5:30. I mean, just right at 5 or even 4:30.
It's also National Peanut Butter Cookie.
The theme.
Well, maybe we could reach out to our award winners and see if that works, and if most of them can make it, let's do it, and if a lot of them can't make it, then maybe let's look at another day.
Yeah, I can do that as up. Do you see how quickly I can get the awards produced, and then we need to check with the bond that date does work for them, so.
That sounds good.
But do you have people that works overtime? It's 5:30.
Booked up for the rest of the month, so I don't know if I could really make it after that, so. It'd have to be a weird day. Yeah, okay, we'll see how that works and then we'll figure it out if it doesn't. Okay, great.
And then, I did mention this briefly, but our next meeting is on Wednesday, the 18th, because, the 19th is a holiday. So, our next meeting,
And the 18th is a holiday because it's my birthday. Just saying.
We'll have to.
I believe that we will have 3 public hearings, so it'll be
Awesome.
Okay,
very
long
fun,
meeting.
long.
I think that's Thursday.
And you're gonna tell us where we're meeting that week or whatever.
Yeah, I'll confirm where we're meeting when I send out the agenda. We will know by the time I send out the notice, which will be next. I think it's next week.
I just wanted a reminder, so I remember.
You'll come on Thursday.
And here, and you're coming here on Thursday. Well,
Is that it? Everything? Everybody's feeling happy? Okay, great. Then I think just, are there any commissioner comments for the good of the order? For that we know Charles's birthday is coming up, so happy old birthday.
I'm just sad about the space, I'm just gonna say.
I mean, it change a lot? Well, that made me cry.
Robert will get a paper. They're gonna make this flat, so. So,
It's ADA
Uh-huh.
Oh,
yeah, but I feel like it's a character to, like, it means something the way it's organized now, like it was very purposeful.
Oh, yeah.
To have the counselors be, yeah, but the current. Maybe that's all I'm saying.
This looks like the mid-century sunken.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah. Very at the time.
Okay.
So say, are they keeping the carpet? Take swaps.
Oh, I have swabs, I have whatever the pink swab, but I have swatches, yes.
Make swag and just like kind of songs.
Yeah, like that.
These are.
Okay, any other comments? Everybody is avoiding eye